On Tuesday, May 10th, 1692, the first victim of the Salem witchcraft panic lost her life. I'll return to that in a moment. First, today, the Salem magistrates issued a warrant for the apprehension of George Jacobs Sr. and Margaret Jacobs. The warrant did not name the victims of the witchcraft with which the two were charged. Constable Joseph Neal arrested George and Margaret and delivered them to the magistrates at Thomas Beadle's Tavern in Salem today. Hathorne and Corwin also wrote out a warrant for John Willard's arrest. They ordered a constable to bring Willard to Beadle's Tavern tomorrow by 1 in the afternoon. But John Willard ran for his life. Constable John Putnam Jr. couldn't find him at his house in Salem Village or at any of the other houses that Putnam searched. John will be arrested a week from now on May 17th. Magistrates questioned George Jacobs Sr. today. He laughed when Abigail Williams was called upon, and he explained that he laughed because I am falsely accused. Your worships, all of you. Do you think this is true? Hathorne asked, who did it? George said, don't ask me. Hathorne said, why should we not ask you? Sarah Churchill accuses you. There she is there. George replied, I am innocent as the child born tonight. I have lived 33 years here in Salem. What then? If you can prove that I am guilty, I will lie under it. Sarah Churchill said, last night I was afflicted at Deacon Ingersoll's, and Mary Walcott said it was a man with 2 staves. It was my master. In real life, George Jacobs Sr. was in his 80s, and he used 2 walking sticks to get around. Now, George said, pray do not accuse me. I am as clear as your worship. You must do right judgment. After Sarah told about how George had hurt her, Hathorne said, look there, she accuses you to your face. She charges you that you hurt her twice. George said, it is not true. What would you have me say? I never wronged no man in word nor deed. Hathorne said, here are 3 evidences. George said, you tax me for a wizard. You may as well tax me for a buzzard. I have done no harm. Is it no harm to afflict these? I never did it. But how comes it to be in your appearance? The devil can take any likeness, not without their consent. And this was 1692's grand theological debate. Could Satan take anyone's form, or did they always have to give permission for him to take on their likeness? For most of the year, the authorities in charge of the witch trial proceedings ruled that Satan only appeared as those who had consented, meaning he could not appear as an innocent person. So saying that you saw an apparition of a person meant the person was a witch who had signed a contract with the devil. Now George pleaded. He said, please, your worship, it is untrue. I never showed the book. I am as silly about these things as the child born last night. And by silly, he meant ignorant. Hathorne said, that is your saying. You argue that you have lived so long, but what then? Cain might live long before he killed Abel, and you might live long before the devil had so prevailed on you. Sarah Churchill urged George to confess and claimed he lived a wicked life. Hathorne asked if George prayed at home with his family, and Sarah said, not unless by himself. When asked why he did not pray, George said, I cannot read. Hathorne said George could pray anyway, and asked him to recite the Lord's Prayer. Samuel Parris, who took the notes of this examination, wrote that George missed several parts of the prayer and couldn't repeat it correctly after many trials. Hathorne asked, were you not frightened, Sarah Churchill, when the representation of your master came to you? She said yes. George responded with another witty comeback. Well, burn me or hang me, I will stand in the truth of Christ. I know nothing of it. George and Margaret were both committed to the Salem jail. We'll hear more from them tomorrow. Elsewhere today, the devil supposedly came to Susanna Sheldon, along with a few witches, who tried to get Susanna to sign the devil's book. And Mercy Lewis was deposed against George Jacobs Sr., telling a story about a spectral visitation on April 20th, claiming George afflicted her many times since then, and outlining how she was tortured by him again last night and again today during his examination. Last night, Mercy said, when she returned home from the examination of George's maid, Sarah Churchill, who we've heard from today, George's specter threatened to kill Mercy if she would not sign his book. Mercy had not testified against Sarah Churchill and said that she had convinced Sarah to confess. And George was apparently unhappy about this in Mercy's perspective. Mercy refused George's hellish temptations, so he beat her with his 2 sticks, almost pulled her bones out of joint, and weakened her heart. And today, according to Mercy, George afflicted her a great many times in the day. In the evening, he most grievously tortured Mercy by pinching her and beating her black and blue. He again threatened to kill her if she didn't sign the book, and she refused, so he beat her up some more before he left. Today, Abigail Williams submitted written testimony against George Jacobs Sr., Margaret Jacobs, George Jacobs Jr., Rebecca Jacobs, Sarah Churchill, Philip English, and Mary English. She claimed that George Sr. made his granddaughter, son, daughter-in-law, and maid sign the devil's book, and had also recruited Philip and Mary English. Abigail also stated that Margaret Jacobs afflicted her today, but she didn't go into details. And finally today, Sarah Osburn died in the Boston jail, likely from typhus, which is also known as jail fever. She was arrested on March 1st with Tituba and Sarah Good, so she was one of the first 3 to be accused. When asked what evil spirit she had familiarity with, she replied none and stated, "No, I never saw the devil in my life." When asked why she hurt the children, she said, "I do not hurt them." When told Sarah Good had pointed the finger at her, she answered, "I do not know that the devil goes about in my likeness to do any hurt." She was transferred to Boston jail, where she would spend the next 9 weeks and 2 days. Conditions were harsh, and prisoners were responsible for their own expenses, including food and lodging, and were exposed to each other's filth in unhygienic conditions. Already in poor health, she had told the court, "Alas, I've been sick and not able to go." That was why she had not been able to attend meeting in so long. She never recovered, and she passed on May 10th, 1692, the first victim of the Salem witch trials, without ever being tried or convicted of anything.